Hello, hello. Pleasure to see you, be seen by you, and to do some yoga with you. I'm inspired in today's class to offer specifically some ways to kind of slow down with our breath and with our body, and then in three very particular postures that we're going to explore of how to really just stay present in them. They're all three kind of intense physically. We're doing Superman or locust, a camel pose, and then also triangle pose. And so it gets to our front and back and side bodies. And a lot of the time when we're in effort of any kind, we tend to kind of contract to get through it. And if life itself is feeling kind of go, 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 I'm hearing that from a lot of people, that they're very, very busy. Sometimes they're not sure why. Other people know they're taking on all kinds of projects or they have some intense life stuff happening. But that there seems to be this theme of kind of just plowing forward. And I would like to explore today how to create more pause, more stillness, more presence, and then even more relaxation inside of effort. So that's the kind of theme we'll be playing with in those three postures, as well as bringing breath to everything that we do. So I'm going to be starting off seated with my breath practice. If that's not comfortable for you, you could certainly be on your back body. You could also sit on something other than the floor or a bolster. So please take time and find some comfort. If you are seated with me, pause to find that root and reach through the spine. And this means that we are not reaching up through the chin, etc. We're finding elongation through the crown that allows the body to feel strong and supportive and stable, but a nice softness available in the neck. There's no, again, gripping. You might particularly check in with the base of the skull where it joins the neck. And if you're laying down, you can even just roll the head side to side to tell that area that it's okay to soften, that you don't need it to be tight to hold your head on. I also think of this area of the skull kind of neck connection, the occipital ridge, as the I've gotta muscles. I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to get there, I've got to hurry. And so softening that part of the body sends a wonderful counter message to our body and being of being present in this moment, there being plenty of time, nothing to know, do, or accomplish. Closing your eyes, turn your gaze up towards the third eye. And invite a softening, melting of the face muscles and as much as possible the limbs. Lightly connect the tip of the tongue at the roof of the mouth behind the front teeth. And inviting a softness at the base of the tongue and into the throat. And this is another position that tells the nervous system that we are safe, well, and whole, non-striving. You might add a soft smile to accentuate that reality. And invitation here to find ujjayi breathing. And that means great sounding breath, or sometimes it's called ocean sounding breath. We contract the throat just a little bit, not so much that we're in effort or striving, just a slight kind of closing of the throat a little bit. So it's like as if you were going to clear your throat or fog a mirror. And it creates this little valve through which the breath flows, making the kind of whooshing sound of waves or wind in the tops of the trees. This valve, this ujjayi breathing, has a number of wonderful effects. I first of all find it a wonderful place to place my mental attention. So if your mind is pretty rambunctious and it's running off like a little puppy everywhere, when you notice that it's doing that, bring it back to this ujjayi and hearing the kind of whooshing sound in your own head. You can even plug your ears to help get in connection with that sound. By connecting with the sound, we also have a greater ability to connect with the quiet and therefore the non-breath that's available in between inhale and exhale, in between exhale and inhale. And that pause, that non-breath, is really key. I think of it like a moment of pause in a beautiful piece of music before it swells again. It's what allows a really peaceful rhythm, and the body gets to know, again, it's well, whole, and safe. When we don't feel that way is when we tend to be breathing in a way that's more fight or flight, right? It's kind of panting and, rapid and forced. So this slowness of the breath, in and out through the nose, and watching for that pause, that gap, is creating such a beautiful pattern of well-being in your systems. If you find it difficult to stay mentally present, even with one breath, try asking, is there more? That's my little phrase. You might come up with something else. But it basically helps me be curious and watching the breath to notice that very subtle moment when the active part of the breath is no longer happening. There's no whisper of breath moving in or out. There's the pause before the next swell of breath. So we're going to be here for a few more, just tuning in to your own ujjayi. And a couple more. See if you are able to let the breath happen. In other words, rather than directing it, what if you just witness it? Is it different? Going to remain in this position unless you're uncomfortable, in which case please do adjust. And we're going to add first a subtle breath lock, meaning just a kind of a moment, a pause, a brief pause, and then we'll practice actually a full breath lock. So the next time you're exhaling, when you witness that the breath is complete, you've done exhaling, hold it out. Say for 3, 2, 1, and then allow the inhale to proceed. And when you witness that it's complete, hold in for 3, 2, 1. Please do a couple more rounds to your own timing. So the invitation now is to take that breath block and extend it, really as long as you can without it becoming a struggle, right? It's not a contest. We don't want to be trying to hold our breath as long as we can. But what we are trying to do is soften around the holding and to really ask, can I hang out here and relax around the intensity? So the next time you exhale, hold out. And as you're holding out, begin to witness the sensations. There's usually some tensions and pressures that might show up in the lung space. But some of us might also find ourselves tightening in the neck or eyebrows or other places as we focus or as we try to hold the breath. Witness and see if you can remain soft, remain melty around the build of pressure of the hold. And then when appropriate for you, release the breath lock, inhale, and hold in. And similarly, as we hold in, the breath lock starts to create certain kinds of tension and little tugs and pulls in the body. Witness where you're experiencing them. Observe if you're tightening. Try to melt, relax. Asking, can I soften around this? And of course, when you cannot, then release the breath lock. And I'm going to invite you to, take a regular breath or two in between, if you'd like, when you're ready to go into another round. And to just be curious, how is this for you? Is it relaxing? Is it stressful? I find it really varies from person to person. And there's a kind of a percentage of people for whom it's a little anxiety building. And if that's the case, again, just practice with that awareness and know that this is a beautiful place to practice relaxing that anxious response if you can. So you might affirm to yourself that you can breathe whenever you'd like, right? That you're not underwater and no one's, making you hold the breath. So it's a wonderful time to recognize I am safe, I'm well, I'm whole. I'm choosing to hold the breath. I'm relaxing around the little sensations. And to just see if that can evolve it at all for you. And you may have already completed one more round. Let's do one last one together. When you are ready, it's an exhale, holding out, observing, softening around it. And then when it's your time, an inhale and holding in. If you're seated, make sure to reinvigorate that beautiful long spine reaching up through the crown. Staying soft through the neck, the tongue, the eyebrows. And when you do release that last hold, just become still, no breath effort of any kind, and observe. What was that like for you? Do you feel anything different than when we started? As I said, some people will find this very relaxing, and you might even use this as a way to wind down if you've had a particularly active, busy day, and you're kind of having a hard time coming down off of it. Breath locks, for me, are a wonderful way to slow down. So notice if it had that effect on you and use it sometime. All right, we're going to come onto our back body. So if you're not already there, please join me. And we're going to come directly up into bridge pose. And this is just a wonderful pose. I love to do it pretty much every day. If you don't do it very frequently, perhaps don't go right up and hold at the upper limit of the pose. And instead, power down through the arms, press the hips up, and then kind of slowly come back down. And you might come a little down or all the way down, and then pressing back up. I'm going to work my shoulder blades underneath, kind of towards each other like a little sandwich, and creates a little valley there that's wonderfully protective for the spine. As you're pressing up, notice if the weight goes out to the outer foot at all, and if so, think about squeezing something with your inner thighs and pushing down through the inner foot, the big toe and ball of the big toe. Next time you are up, invitation to hold, make sure your feet are no more than like 4 or 6 inches apart, and see if you can add the leg extension without dropping the hip. So I'm just straightening through one leg at a time. If that's too much, you can just do a foot hover, as I call it, where you're just lifting one foot at a time and holding. And we're deeply curious whether the hip is dropping, and if so, using the standing leg to push off and bring those hips back up into neutral. Try not to use the neck. Breathing slow, deep and wide, Ujjayi. And let's go one last set. And slowly release. And we always like opposites in yoga, so I'm going to bend the other way here, knees to belly. But we can also go from here, for example, into happy baby. We might clasp at the ankles or grab the big toes. Or if you can't reach your feet comfortably, you could use a strap over the arch. But this is a wonderful pose for waking up and stretching through the thighs and the hips, the low back. And it's a wonderful remedy for some of the sitting and repetitive movements we do in daily life. And then I'm going to go from here into a straddle. So I'm just going to bring my hands down behind the legs and push out through the heels. And again, it often is helpful for the body to pulse, to not just kind of hold and freeze. So I'm kind of bending the knees and then pressing through the heels. And then I'm going to bring one heel in towards the butt, keeping the other leg straight. And it kind of rolls me out to the side a little. And then I'm going to switch. And this is, again, just a great stretch for into the hips, the hamstrings. It's a great way to find out what's in those legs. We're going to be giving them a good stretch later with our triangle. And at some point you might bring the feet together in butterfly. This is an active butterfly where I've got my feet together at the butt. If you preferred, you could bring them to the floor for a more passive butterfly. If you're here with the feet together by the groin, then you might also even add a little sit-up motion and maybe a little windshield wiper as I think of it, kind of bringing one foot towards the head and then the other. And if this is bothersome on your neck, you just do it with the head on the floor. And you get some nice hip movement. Beautiful. And release. We're going to come on up into seated for a spinal twist today. If you prefer laying down spinal twist, remember you just come onto one side, what we call embryo pose, and then come into your twist from there. I'm going to do a seated twist with my legs crossed. There's also a more classic version with one leg extended and one knee in. If you're familiar with that and enjoy that, please do. And in fact, throughout our practice, always make adjustments. I'm just going to have my hands kind of resting on the legs, and I'm going to be using them a little bit, but I'm not so much using the force or power of my hands and arms to make the twist. I'd love for each twist to come from my exhale and to contract the abdomen towards the spine like you're kind of wringing a rag. And so as I exhale, I'm drawing my abdomen towards my spine and using that to rotate my body in space. So each inhale, come to center, asking, is there more? And each exhale, begin with the lower abdomen, even with the pelvic floor, engaging, letting it work its way up the spine, asking, is there more? And letting the inhale bring you back. We'll do a couple more, your timing. And the next time you are in your twist, invitation to take your arm that's that same direction and just reach it behind you like you're kind of presenting a platter behind you. And release, inhaling center. Exhaling, rotating to the other side, and take your hand and sweep your platter behind you. Marvelous. And then we're going to roll forward onto hands and knees for puppy stretch. So bringing your butt back a little bit in order to come safely down into puppy, our forehead coming to the floor, the hands extended if you can. If this bothers your shoulder, always make an adjustment that respects the shoulder. So if you need to bend an arm, you could. If you need to place the head on the block or something like that. Once you've found your position, please bring that same slow breath with the gap or pause to this shape. Inhaling, asking, is there more? Is there more? Witnessing the pause and exhaling. To come up out of this pose, please tuck the tailbone and come on up, bringing your hands right under the shoulders. We want that nice, intelligent hand position. We're going to do a little cow-cat, so drawing the heart forward away from the tailbone. Notice that I'm elongating through my spine. I'm not reaching my chin forward and crimping the back of the neck. Exhaling, cat back. Inhaling, cow pose. And we'll take our next cat back to downward facing dog. So curling the toes under, powering down through the pad of the thumb and index finger, and using that anchoring to send the hips up and back. And inviting you to initially bend and straighten the legs. So I'm kind of pedaling, just exploring what's in my calves, my Achilles tendons, my hamstrings. If you take it out wide, you'll get a nice little movement of that stretch kind of into the further out part of the leg. Beautiful. And setting your gaze between your feet, join me in 3 sighing breaths. Inhaling slow, deep, and wide. And exhaling through the mouth. Sighing acknowledges again the relaxed state of our body and being. So here we are in a deep engagement, right? A lot of effort, a lot of power. Sighing, letting any tension roll right out the head. One more. And then releasing the knees, bringing the toes together behind you and coming into a kneeling position. If this doesn't work for your knees, you could go into ragdoll instead, or child's pose a moment. We're going to roll out those wrists, and we're going to come into a quadricep stretch that, again, if this version doesn't work for you, you could do a standing quad stretch. So in this version, I'm just bringing my hands behind my back, like so, however you need to support. And then I'm squeezing the glutes to bring that stretch right into the hip flexors and the thighs. If you were going to do the standing version instead, you would be clasping one ankle at a time. And if the balance part of it is too much, then you want to hold on to a countertop or something. Because I really want you to get to relax into this stretch, to welcome it. In the standing version, it's important to make sure that that bent knee is moving in towards the standing leg, not winging out. And you're squeezing your glutes. So it's the same exercise as those of us who are in kneeling. We could also do pre-bow, which we often do on our bellies. So again, squeezing and releasing. And then if you're in this position, inviting you to join me the next time you squeeze your glutes, just reach up through one arm and release. And squeeze the glutes and reach up through the other arm. This is helping get us ready for camel pose. Let's do one more each side. And relax. Good. Let's come into child's pose or puppy once more, whatever feels good. Or if you want to go into downward facing dog again, that's a nice action, a much more effort-filled pose. So for camel, again, we're on our knees. So if this just does not work, this is our basic position, we'll be in this 90-degree angle. One thing that can help is just adding a little padding under the knees. So I'm kind of folding up my mat, so I've got a little more under the knees. Another option is to do essentially what we're doing, but to do it standing. That would be another way, okay? In both positions, so the principle here in camel is that we are sending our pelvis forward. So you can almost imagine that there's like a wall here, and that I want to press my hip bones into the wall. And that's requiring a committed action from the glutes. It's really important that I'm not giving up on those, and that I'm not going to hinge backward, right? Because if I hinge backward, it's actually a ridiculous amount of work on these muscles to hold me, to hold my body weight. In this position, this is pretty neutral, and so they're going to get a better workout that they're designed to have here. So we don't want to strain them. If you are in this position, but you are not able to reach the heel, which is ultimately kind of where we're headed in a moment with our hand, then you can do the same thing that standing folks will do, which is just bringing whatever hand would normally be moving to the foot will come right to the back, kind of the top of the butt, low back. And I just do that with a fist usually. Some people do that flat with their hand, but I find that doesn't feel really great. So I'm going to have you first of all come into prayer hands, and I'm going to face the thumb towards the heart space. And if it feels right, you can even kind of connect it in there, make contact. And so as you're ready, I'm going to ask you to engage those glutes forward into that imaginary wall with the hip bones. Good. And then you're going to slowly take your left hand and you're going to reach for your heel. It is easier if you're on the ball of the foot than if the foot is flat because it's not as far to go. It's also easier if you're just making contact and kind of pushing with the fingers versus going deeper with the palm. So it's up to you. But I want you to be enough in a state of ease to stay here for at least 3 breaths if you can. And a note before we go there, actually, that if, in fact, you're in the pose and you're like, holy cow, I can't get out of the pose, right? I want to always point out that if you've gotten yourself kind of further back, which I didn't want you to do, but if you did, then getting forward is really hard. All you have to do to come out usually then is to just relax your butt back to your heels. So it's important to know ahead of time. That's your exit strategy, all right? So as you are ready, however you'd like to position your feet and make sure those glutes are engaged forward. I'm also going to engage my ribs forward. Again, this is key in whatever version of the pose you're doing. And then you're going to reach back, and I like to follow with my vision. I find it helps me make sense of the pose. And then once you're there, extend up through your other hand. And so it's like you're telling your heart where to go with those extended fingers. If it doesn't feel good to be looking up, then set your vision and face forward. 3 still, long breaths. And on an inhale, come back up, relax the feet, and exhaling, fold into your child's pose or your ragdoll. Again, in yoga, we really like to give ourselves the opposite shapes. It helps the muscles get strong without kind of going into gripping. Because they're really good. They do, what we tell them to do. And if we say, hold this shape, then they kind of do that, right? So notice how good going into child's pose feels after camel. We'll come into the other side, and again, make any adjustments that you need to make this make sense. Another note that I should have offered is that you want your feet straight back from your knees. If they're closer to one another than that, it actually makes this a lot harder than it should be. So again, either with your feet flat or on the ball of the foot, hands in prayer, thumbs connected to that heart space, and I'm really with awareness connecting my palms so that there's an enlivenment here. Engaging the glutes forward, the heart forward, slowly reaching back with my right hand to my right heel. Reinvigorating glutes and rib cage, and then reaching up from the heart through those middle fingers. Breathing. Inhaling and exhaling, looking for the gap. One more long inhale and come up with that, and then exhale and fold. Taking deep, deep breath into the abdomen so that you feel it register into your back. And if you'd like, it'd be fun to add a little yoga mudra here, a nice again kind of counter shape for the arms. So intertwining the fingers and rotating the shoulder heads down the back, seeing if you can get the arms straight. You can always do this standing, add a strap, leave it out. And as you're ready to release, we're going to tuck our tailbone one more time to come up. If you folded up your mat, you'll want to put it back into its normal state. we're going to come all the way down to our belly to approach our locust or Superman pose. But before we do that, let's just get used to being right here on our front body. Go ahead and just rock your hips if you would. Rock, 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 rock. And this is a really nice warming for the pelvic kind of sutures too into the sacroiliac joints, and it's good for the organs. And you could also bend the knees and do a little windshield wiper with the low leg. I always caution to do that relatively slowly because you don't want to be winging all that heavy weight around to the side. Sometimes our lower back does not appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to come into the preparation for locust pose. Full locust or Superman pose is with the arms overhead. And I just find that not everyone's neck or shoulders appreciate that. So I want to start with our jet airplane. And it's the same basic alignments as Superman, which is that anchoring of the pelvis, shoulder heads are anchored down the back. And that as we breathe, we're extending long, which will lift us up, but we're not thinking about going up. We go up as a result of extending long. So as you're ready on an inhale, anchor the pelvis and extend through the crown of the head towards the wall behind you. Exhale, return. Inhale and extend. You might reach the hands off the floor towards the wall behind you. And exhale and return. If it feels appropriate in your body, you might also reach through the feet and legs. So the legs absolutely are straight here. Nice deep engagement through the fronts of the thighs. And exhale and return. So depending on how this is feeling to you, I'm going to offer some add-ons and you decide how much to take. If your lower back is feeling a little irritated with this, then I would keep the legs rooted and you would just do the upper body, okay? But otherwise, the main thing we're changing here is we're taking the arms overhead. And I still want my shoulder heads anchored down the back. I'm not shrugging and trying to reach and get every inch that I can. So reach through the fingers, but then anchor through the shoulders. Find that balance. Deep breath in. Deep exhale, anchoring through the pelvis. And on your inhale, extending through your limbs into full Superman or locust pose. Exhaling, return. And either coming in and out again for a couple more breaths or holding, up to you. Try to imagine that your legs are neutral, that you're not rotating the feet out. That's a really common thing I see people do is kind of rotating the feet out, and it's going to use a different part of the thigh. So we want to be as neutral as we can. Maybe think about squeezing something between the thighs, like a block. One last extension. And release. Turn your head to the other side and rock those hips. Rock, 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 rock. So if you haven't done a lot of this kind of extension through the spine, you might not be able to get off the floor at all. And that's fine. Just keep thinking about extending. And what's fun, I've seen this over and over again, is it really wakes up these muscles, and before long, you'll be able to create more extension. Another good pose actually to practice that in is Sphinx or Cobra pose, right, where our hands are just outside the chest. So these are some other poses we can play with. All right, let's press back to our child's pose one more time. Take those knees wide, sink that butt back in. You can add sighing breaths anytime you like. And we're ultimately going to be moving it back to onto our feet in ragdoll. You could go directly there if you want to do less shoulder work. Otherwise, join me in coming first to downward dog. So I'm going to tuck my tailbone on up, bringing myself into table once more, curling the toes under. I'm going to inhale, cow pose, slow, deep and wide. Is there more? Can I find the gap? Exhaling, belly to spine, and sending the hips up and back to downward facing dog. Working the heels towards the floor.
And then as you're ready, just walking those hands back to the feet. If you're hungry for dog series, of course you could always add that in. We'll be doing more of that in our flow class later this week. But you can absolutely throw that in anywhere your body's inspired. So hanging out here, we can do some wonderful organic movements, just shifting our weight side to side can really bring some nice stretching into the IT bands and so on. If you choose to kind of sweep the area around your feet, you can feel the stretches sometimes kind of rotate into the hamstring or even up into the hips. And then as you're ready to come up, please drop the butt and then press up using the vigor of the thighs. And resolving in prayer hands at the heart, the thumbs lightly connected to the chest. Marvelous. We're going to go sideways on our mat. You might roll out your ankles a little bit first. I find that is often just feels really, really good, because when we're rolling our ankles, it's not just accessing the ankle joints, but all the way up into the connections into the shin and the knee and so on. All right, we're going to go sideways on our mat in straddle. So you've got your feet wide, parallel, best you can. And we're going to just be doing a little prep here for a triangle pose. Triangle pose is actually one of my favorite poses, and I often forget to incorporate it or offer it to you as often as I could. So notice if it's something that your body really likes. We're going to be rotating one foot 90 degrees. So let's all start with the same foot. Take your right foot 90. And I want you to just pause and notice, where is the weight in your foot? And if you look at your foot and you intentionally shift the weight to the outside, the blade, as I think of it, you'll see how that changes the shape of your ankle and your leg, and that your arch kind of lifts a little. That's not where we want to be. So I want you to now anchor through the pad of the big toe and the big toe itself. And notice how that creates a really nice neutral alignment of both the foot and the knee joint. And then I'd like you to just sort of cock that right hip and straighten. So we're just doing a nice little movement here, kind of warming into the hip joints and noticing what's there, like what's it like for you today. Triangle pose is a pose that I frequently see people try to go too far in, and then when we do that, we actually miss out on the benefits, and we even sometimes take on some icky tension that we don't want. All right, we're gonna switch. So like I said, we're gonna kind of do this stage by stage, really getting the body ready for it. So now we're turning the left foot 90, so it's towards the end of the mat. We're anchoring through the inner line of the foot, and we're gonna cock the left hip, clunk, and straighten. And cock it, and straighten. Again, this is a chance for us to notice, is this side different? How's it feeling? And you'll start to potentially even feel things up into your back and your side body. That's one of the gifts of triangle pose, but we want to be aware as well. All right, let's return both feet, straddle. During this play with triangle, one of the other keys is keeping the head really in alignment with the spine. Most of us will tend to move it forward of our body to help us feel like we're not going to fall over backwards. If you can, just adjust that, but also know you could practice this with a wall behind you as well. I'm going to grab my block, and if you've got one handy, I encourage you, you could also just place a chair, actually kind of right beyond your right foot. So I'm going to turn my right foot 90 again, and the deeper the lunge you can have here, or the triangle legs, the more I think you'll enjoy this. So if you can, scooch that front foot until you feel that you've got a really nice broad stance. That back foot can still stay anchored. If it can't, you've gone too far. And I'm going to just place the block inside of that right foot so that I know I've got access as I choose to progress down. So first, again, I'm going to try and get those shoulders stacked, cock that hip, check that my head is not forward in the spine. And I'm going to actually rotate to look down. And I'm going to just take my right hand and gently kind of pet or slide inside of the leg. If I'm able to get a hold of the block or connect with it, it can be with fingertips, fist, palm, whatever makes sense in your body. I want to pause and notice if I feel like I can kind of hang out here and relax into it and breathe. If not, then I want to come further up. You might only be at a slight angle like this. That is fine. I'd rather have you do that than be, again, kind of surviving something. So first I'm going to invite you to just find your breath. Make sure that this right hip is swinging in towards the center line of the mat, that you're not cocking it out behind you. And then if it feels appropriate, see if you can raise that left or top arm. Sometimes it feels fun to kind of look at that hand. If it bothers the neck, then readjust. And see if you can reach up towards the sky through your rib cage, much like we do in lateral stretch. One more long breath. Slowly come up and move to your straddle feet again. We're going to rotate the left foot 90. So in this first round, we're going to be doing one more. Our goal is to just find a position in triangle that we can breathe in a really relaxed way. At the next stage, I'm going to invite you to challenge that a little bit. The breath is going to become a little more labored, if you will, but it's going to really activate the pose in a fun way. So as you're ready, cock that left hip. Make sure that the shoulders are stacked. Again, I'm going to look down at my left foot as I slowly slide that left hand down, and I either just kind of connect the back of the hand to the inside of the calf, or I maybe decide to connect with the block. And you can even use this hand, this tap hand, to encourage that this right hip is drawing back. And that's what also allows this left hip to press forward and keeps us flat, like we're between two panes of glass. And then you can reach up through that right arm. Maybe you're looking down and breathing. Again, if you witness that you can't really breathe here fully and deeply, you want to come up into a less intense version. And notice what's happening in the waistline, again, kind of pressing the ribs to the sky. But this part of our body actually does a lot of work in this pose. It also gets a wonderful stretch if we do it right. When you're ready to come up, nice long inhale, reaching straight up. Get that block out of the way, turn the heels again into neutral. And I'm going to bend the knees and just hang in our straddle here. Nice little ragdoll of the spine. And I'm going to go side to side. Just nice and easy, just helping the body release any of its holding. Good. And when you are ready, come back up. So I am not going to be using the block on this round because I find that because I am breathing deeply, that the inhale, and hopefully this will happen in your body too, the inhale is going to bring you up a little out of the pose. And then on the exhale, there's an invitation, an opportunity to go deeper. So I feel a lot of fluctuation and prefer to just do it without the block. But you can see, again, how that feels to you. And it may be that in the beginning, if this is new to you, that your body doesn't get that much fluctuation. It requires a certain amount of sort of trust and feeling safe and stable. And a lot of that is going to come from that deep anchoring of the legs. If you let these legs kind of bend, you've lost your core. And this will feel very hard, and the body will recognize that it's not safe, and it won't release. So let's breathe and allow the body to find that release best we can. So as you're ready, cock that right hip, slide that right hand down, check the head and neck alignment. If you'd like, take that left arm to the sky. That makes it more intense. You don't have to do that part. Anchor the shoulder heads down the back and breathe. Big inhale. Exhaling, deepening. You're powering through your back foot, through your crown, so you're nice and strong and long. Again, twice more. And then a long inhale brings us straight up. And then we'll switch. Left foot 90. So again, if you feel that you are surviving this please adjust. Don't go as deep. Give yourself more support. Yeah, and again, you don't even have to raise the top arm. Okay, cocking the left hip. I'm pushing with my feet like I'm trying to stretch my yoga mat. I'm also contracting up and in through the inner thigh. So again, I feel really, really stable. I'm going to take that left hand and slide it on down. I'm going to add my right arm reaching up, and now beginning that beautiful pulsing breath. Inhaling, let it lift you a little. And exhaling, deepening. Inhaling, remember to come straight up like there's a pulley, bringing your arm up. And neutral the feet, bend the knees. And one more time, just hang. So triangle pose, as I mentioned, can be just a marvelous stretch into the thighs and hips and side body. And a lot of people really, really enjoy it. If you aren't enjoying it, you're going too far. You're going past your edge. And turning those heels in, please. Come up with ease. Big inhale. Exhaling, prayer hands. So again, my theme for today is more than ever to invite us to really find spaciousness, to use the breath to connect with, whether it's the breath blocks or just watching the kind of passive neutral breath like a baby sleeping and trying to find that lovely little pause in the piece of music. Or if it's in one of these very active poses, to activate deep inhale and let the exhale happen. I will say that camel pose, the one where we're bent backwards, will be much harder to do that in. Anytime that we are in a back bend, there's just not as much space for breath. So don't be surprised if your breath is shortened, but we still want to be able to take on kind of a countenance of relaxation, right? No furrowed eyebrows, soft mouth, and so on. So notice, please, what your body would like now to just kind of culminate all of what you did. Often we will use the block under the sacral triangle, and that might feel really good to you today. If you're doing that, you're just going to plant the feet and take the block up under the sacrum. Another possibility is to place it or like a rolled up towel or something kind of fairly soft under the ribs, just south of the wingtips of the shoulder blades, so that the shoulder blades themselves are free to move, and you drape yourself back. And this can feel pretty wonderful. Great place to breathe into your chest and ribs. And we can also explore one arm at a time overhead to see what's going on in those shoulders and let any tension go. So finding your version. If you're reclined, make sure that when you come off the block, you roll the head a little to one side. You never want to lift directly up. It's really, really hard on the neck. Stay there as long as it's feeling amazing. When you do come off your object of support or out of whatever stretch or final pose you were in, please just consider what would be your best resting shape for today, to really let this all circulate and sink in. Ideally, when we can do anywhere from like 5 to 10 minutes of Shavasana, that is marvelous. I'm going to just do this with you together for about a minute. But I encourage you, if you notice a wonderful quieting in your body, and you can just be still and let the gifts of the practice circulate, that would be really, really powerful. What we find, interestingly, is that we enjoy the going and the doing more, that we can fully throw ourselves into life and enjoy it and digest it if we also have the pause. And so encouraging you to notice if you've been having enough pause moments in your life. And if not, how can you create them? Whether it's through a particular breath practice, some of the ones that we did today, whether it's becoming still with your morning cup of coffee or tea and looking at the sky, feeling the breeze on your skin, these kinds of little meditations, or a full-on meditation itself. And it might just be a 3 or 5 minute meditation, but that could make all of the difference. When you are ready to rest deeply, let go of any breath control. Turn your gaze once more in towards the third eye point. This would be a lovely time if you have any kind of self-soothing mantra that you'd like to say to your body and being. Some of the ones that I use are, again, I am well, I am whole, I am safe. Plenty of time, plenty of help, plenty of money. And we know that gratitude itself is profoundly healing and settling. So it might simply be an expression of appreciation and thanks. Notice if your mind has wandered, and bring it back into a quiet witnessing of your breath, of this amazing body that you're in. You might do a scan of the body, just kind of witnessing its sensory experiences. We can also invite any wisdom from the body if it has information about what's needed, what would create greater wholeness. How much rest or activity, what kinds of foods, how much social, how much inward, and on and on. I wish you a marvelous, marvelous week, and that you will find many moments throughout the week to create your own little bits of quiet, of stillness with your body, with your breath. If you care to join me in Ohms, please do. Otherwise, just let the vibration move on over and around you. If you're joining me, please gather a long inhale. Om Shanti Shanti. Om Peace Peace. Namaste. I'll see you again soon at the mat, I hope.